One of the best pieces of advice that I got early on was to not chase money, but to chase experience.
This video is proudly sponsored by Chapman University's Archibald College of Business and Economics, located in beautiful sunny Southern California. Are you thinking about pursuing a master's in accounting? Chapman's MSA program is tailored for ambitious professionals like you. With intimate class size and a collaborative atmosphere, you will receive personalized attention from world-class faculty who bring extensive industry expertise to the classroom. Enhance your accounting skills, fulfill CPA license requirements, and elevate your career with Chapman's flexible MSA program. Discover more and apply today at chapman.edu/MSA.
You work at GE Aviation for about 4 years, and then you moved to director of FP&A for about a year and a half. I would say a year and 4 months. It sounds like after that you start your own business, as you mentioned in April 2020. So what made you make the decision to transit from GE Aviation to FP&A and then to do your own business?
Yeah, so at the time when I was working at GE, my wife and I were living in Cincinnati, and neither of us are from the Midwest. And so we wanted to move closer to family. We wanted warmer weather. And so we had looked at moving to the Carolinas and we picked Charlotte. So we started, at the time I had talked to my manager and told him, hey, what I was looking to do. And at the time, there were several people at General Electric who really wanted me to stay on, and they were just like, "Hey, we can find some remote jobs for you to do." And this was back in 2018, before remote work was a big thing. And they were like, "Hey, we can find some remote positions for you to do." And I was like, "I appreciate it, but I don't think that was the best thing for their team, because I felt like it would have disrupted the dynamics of their team." And I'm like, I don't want to put you in. I know you want me to stay on the team and you want to create an opportunity for me, but I'm like, that's not the best for you and the rest of the team. And so I decided to step away. And I was gonna say, hey, I'll take some downtime, and I'd apply for some jobs. Like 3 weeks into being in Charlotte, North Carolina, like I got a call and they gave me a job offer. So I came on, and it was a tech startup. So it was a good opportunity to learn a skill set that I didn't have, which was the whole process of like acquiring other companies and raising capital. And so I really dove in deep and did a ton of financial modeling. And during my time there, we raised about 120 million in private equity funding. We bought two other companies. So I got a lot of experience, but it did come with working like sometimes 90-hour work weeks. And I was just like, all right, this is not the pace that I wanted to be in. And so I talked to the CFO, and at the time we were still wrapping up one of the last fundraising rounds, and I was like, hey, I'm not gonna leave you in the middle of this. I will stay so we can get this over the finish line. But I do need to take a step back, and it just so happened like my last day was the last day of March in 2020, which it ended up working out for them because during as things were shutting down, revenue for the company was going down. So it's like, hey, I told my CFO, this is one position you don't have to worry about laying off, because hey, I'm voluntarily leaving. And so I left because at that point I felt like I had all the skills necessary, I think, to really run my own business. From I knew the accounting, I knew the how to work with people, I knew how to work through a disaster recovery plan. I knew I had learned some about negotiating, and I had learned some about making business decisions, and I had learned how to raise capital. And so having all of that experience, I was like, hey, I was ready to start my own business. Now, what I didn't know is I knew nothing about marketing. So I'm just like, oh, that was one business lesson that I didn't know, but I had to learn it when I started the firm.
It's interesting that your firm you focusing on, if I remember correctly, only law firms. But through our conversation, I didn't see you mention anything experience with law firms. Why did you pick that niche?
Yeah, so that was in the process of learning marketing. A few things that I learned was, when you're trying to brand a company or you're trying to brand a product or service, I mean, if you're not clear about who you do business with, like they're not gonna know. And so I had to learn how to be clear about who I do business with. And, for the first year and a half, at the time when I was running the firm, I'm like, I'll work with anybody who needs an accountant, anyone who needs a bookkeeper, I'll do the work, or they need a financial model made, I'll do it. And what I realized is it was not going to be possible for me to scale that. And so after probably doing some over that time, doing some consulting with about, there were like probably like 17 lawyers that I had done some consulting with. And I realized like, when I think about all the companies that we work with, I understood the legal industry because their business was very similar to running an accounting firm. I understood the numbers. They could afford to pay our rates, and plus they needed the help. And then also from a marketing standpoint, like most lawyers know other lawyers. So it would be even easier for me to get referrals to continue growing. And what I realized is that lawyers have a more tighter relationship and connection with their peers than other industries did. For example, like, restaurant owners, I mean, they may know of other restaurant owners, but they're too busy to constantly build relationships with them. So I wasn't getting as many referrals there. Same thing like with engineering or, product based businesses, like they were so busy running their businesses that they didn't really know a ton of other lawyers. But I'm like, they didn't know other business owners in their industry, but lawyers, every one of them have to be part of a bar association. um they all probably went to college with other lawyers, and so they knew a lot of other lawyers that they could introduce me to. And I was like, well, from a marketing standpoint, this allows me to get in front of my ideal audience in a much, you know, strategic way. And so I just decided we're going to focus the firm on helping law firms because they need us. We understand their industry, they can afford to pay us, and we can develop a really good marketing strategy for them.
That's so smart. Oh my god. This just make your business run like grow big a lot faster because as you mentioned, lawyers know lawyers. Their connection just fit your business and grow your business so fast. That's amazing how you find out that niche and how you pay attention through the marketing process. I noticed that you pick up lessons really quick from our conversation. Every single time you share me the story, I noticed that you pick up the lesson right away and then move on to the next one. Running your own business sounds like a perfect fit for you. You have something wrong, you fix it, you move on, the next one.
Yeah, I think it's that benefit of coming from a military environment where, I'm very grateful for, my father and just the military environment because I think, from all of the training that, like, the men in my family who went into the military, one of the things you learn is like, hey, things are going to happen that you didn't plan for. You got to figure out what can you control, what can you change, and then make the best decision and move forward. Now, my situation was never as dire as theirs because they're in a life or death situation many times. But I think just that lesson of being able to, hey, understand the situation that you're in. What can I control? What can I change? All right, let's make a decision on the best information we have and let's move forward. And let's try not to make that mistake again. And I think that I took that same mentality into running a business of, hey, the situation is not a life or death situation. So I'm not afraid to try things. But hey, when you try something, you experience it, hey, figure out what worked, what you can control, what can you change, and then let's learn from our mistakes and then let's move forward in a very, as efficiently as we can.
Yep, I see that a lot in my husband. He was in Navy for 8 years. So I can see a lot that mentality in him. And I can tell always a lot of time I tell him that I wish I can have a little bit of discipline from you. Because whenever he has a to-do list, he knock all the items in that list so fast. By half of the day, everything is like pretty much done in the list. I have like a to-do list. By the end of the day, they still the same.
I will say I'll say that military mindset, it is very different when it comes down to getting tasks done because my
Yep,
wife and I have very similar conversations where it's like my wife not at all a military background at all. And so at times when we're getting stuff done and it's like, you give me a list, I will get it done like on top of everything else that I got going on. Like I'm going to make some priority decision, we'll move some stuff around and sometimes she comes back and she's like, "Well, how did you get all this stuff done?" And I'm just like, I don't know how to explain it, but we got it done. It's time to
exactly.
move forward.
Exactly. I think my husband actually last night he was so frustrated because I didn't get the things done that he wanted. So he actually wrote down the to-do list for me. And then, and then like, could you please do this? Because he couldn't do these items when he at work. So but whenever sometimes like during the week I couldn't do it, and on Saturday he just like, okay, what's left? Give it to me. And like I served all the items during the week, and he just finished that in one day. So
It becomes this singular like focus that like cuts on and I think also it's just like the military environment, like being in that environment. And my father was a medic in the military, so it's like you got to be prepared for medical emergencies that happen in the field, and you have no idea what is going to happen. So sometimes like you tend to you tend to prepare for so many different scenarios, so it's like when the situation comes up, it's almost like you have this, path already mapped out in your mind on, or I would say you have a framework on how to deal with any situation that comes up. The framework. And I think also it's just like being able to control your emotions to know how to navigate it. And I saw it, it was something in me, like even as a kid, I remember once before I was, riding a skateboard with one of my friends, and I remember like I was on the skateboard, it hit a hole and I fell and I had broken my leg. Now at the time, I didn't know my leg was broken. I just knew it hurt really bad. And so when it happened, it's like my father being a medic, I know, okay, all right, when you injure your leg, all right, you need to roll over, get on your back, lift your leg higher than, your heart to stop the blood flow. And then, you need to brace it to control it and get somewhere to put ice on it. And so like when I got injured and all the pain that I was in, the thing that was paying through my head was the framework. All right, you need to get somewhere, lie down, elevate your leg, and all the pain is still there. And it's just that military environment just like drills in you like how to get things done no matter what. And so that mindset has just stayed. And so now, like as a leader of a firm, it's like I have to like pull it back a little bit because the rest of my team doesn't have the same perspective on things. And so it's like really having to step back and kind of teaching the team how to, develop mental frameworks to handle whatever situation comes at your, just being able to break it down into pieces and to be able to move through it. Because what I realize is as you start to break it down in pieces, you'll get a whole lot more accomplished than you realize, but you got to have some type of framework that you're working through to get it done.
I agree with you about that. That sounds like how my husband does to me every day. He will break down small things so I can get things done or understand what he's talking about. That's just so funny. I believe that being a leader in your firm must be very challenging for you because you have to take care of pretty much everything. Even I know you have a team, but when things come up, you will be the decision maker. So as being a founder of this group, what are top 3 lessons that you learned the most from being a leader in your firm, your own
Yeah, I
practice?
think the first one I think is just understanding that as a leader, my job is not to do the work. My job is really to make the vision clear to my staff, to provide them with the resources that they need, and to give them some guardrails. And as long as I'm focusing on those three things of like painting what's the big picture that we're working on, giving them some guidance and some guardrails that they can operate within, and then also making sure that they have the resources to go execute. And why I say, particularly about giving them guardrails as opposed to giving them instructions is that a lot of times what I was doing before was giving them instructions on how to get things done, and what they would do is they would be able to perform the specific instructions that I gave them, but the next time the situation comes up and it's a little bit different, they didn't know how to navigate it. And so what I had to do is step back and say, okay, how do I give you the guardrails to say, hey, here are the boundaries. You can operate within the boundaries. And what it started to do is it started to let them gain a bit more independence in the work that they were doing. Like if I was teaching them, like, we hired a new person, I was teaching them how to do a financial analysis. Like, I'm not going to teach you step by step. What I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you the framework and give you some guidance and some framework. And as they started to learn that, I started to notice that, hey, it became less stressful on me, and they started to learn how to make some of their own decisions. And then I think the second thing was really not being afraid to hold people accountable, because once you've given them you've painted the picture of what the objective is, you've given them the necessary resources, they have the guardrails, and then it's going back and holding them accountable. Because that accountability, what I noticed is it really helped the team develop a sense of confidence in themselves. Because what I notice is sometimes when people are trying to do something that is outside of their comfort zone, they tend to shy away from it, or it becomes very easy to find excuses as to why you can't get it done. But when you are holding them accountable, in that process of holding them accountable, I can ask questions like, hey, why do you think you're unable to get this done? And how can we work together to get you through this? And by being able to answer that question, I could reassure them that, like, hey, I believe you have what it takes to get this done. Or, hey, yes, you're working on it, but hey, this part should only take about 2 hours. What's going on here? We can talk through some of the, hurdles. And sometimes it may be that they had a misunderstanding and we can clarify that. So I think that accountability is there. One is to make sure that I'm helping them build the confidence that they need to continue executing. And then I think a very big one that I had to learn, and this is one that people who have a military mindset struggle with a lot: celebrating progress. Because sometimes we're so focused on just getting things done, all right, we got this done, what's the next thing? And sometimes we forget to slow down and stop and celebrate the progress that we've made so far. And so as a leader, like, I had to learn that, because I can just, focus on the next task. Let's get the next thing done, move on to the next thing. But for the rest of my team, that's not the way they operate. So I had to slow down and say, all right, how do I help you celebrate the progress that we've made so far? And what I noticed is the better we got at celebrating the progress, the more confident they became on being able to perform with more independence on the next task and the next task. And then also, I mean, it became a like kind of a 360 kind of experience for me, because I think back to my very first most important lesson from public accounting was learning how to understand, my own pace and understand my own capacity, and knowing when I needed to speak up about, hey, can we change something? Can we make some adjustments? So learning to celebrate the progress, it gave my team a healthy opportunity to be able to speak up when they would say, like, hey, congratulations, we made it to this milestone. And then people felt more comfortable saying, like, hey, before we set the next goal, can we get a little bit of a break before we set the next one? And I think in celebrating those milestones, it helped me to become a better leader to my team. And it helped me also become better for myself and even for my marriage, because, you don't want to keep going and going and going in your business and then neglect the things in your personal life. And so I think those are my three things. I think of just having to figure out how to paint the vision and give them the resources and the guidance, then how to hold people accountable, and then how to celebrate the milestones.
I like the last one. I think not just only people with military mentality has that issue. I think a lot of people, a lot of, I would say, perfectionists have that issue. Will be like, what's next? What's next? For me, like, okay, I get this, what I want. What's my next plan? What's the next goal? Let's have a plan from the next goal and then continue. So it's tough to do that, but that's great that you are doing that to your team and you're doing that for yourself as well. And it's true. It's good for your work and in your life as well. That's perfect. We talked so much about your career. Now I want to talk about something fun about your podcast. That's what I'm so interested in. You have the podcast called. I see that you have two podcasts. One podcast is that Business Talk Library, and another podcast is that stuff your accountant isn't telling you. Is that right?
Yeah, so I would say we made a change to that. Like, we do have the Business Talk Library. What we did is we realized that it became the overall media company that we launch multiple podcasts and content strategies through. So it's like the Business Talk Library became like the overall umbrella for all of these different media operations that we're doing. So within the media operations now, what we have is like the stuff your accountant isn't telling you. It was a show, and it was a podcast we ran for about a year and a half. And then now we've evolved it to this concept that we came up with in our business called the golden age. And this is where, as a leader, me growing, recognizing like I had to approach leading the business differently. And when we think about, performance with the team, like, really, your performance is probably going to be average, good, or excellent. And that's how we came up with that acronym AGE. And then, like I said, we called it the golden age. And so really what we do is we talk about how that framework of average, good, excellent applies to every area of your business. Because what I thought about in leading the people in my team is like, when I let my team kind of evaluate themselves, and then I do an evaluation. And what I noticed one year is everyone evaluated themselves a 5 out of 5 on everything. And I was like, that's not how I see their performance. So I'm like, there's a disconnect here somewhere. So I'm like, if there is a disconnect, it's probably on my part. I didn't do as great of a job of, spelling it out for them. And so what I realized is most people were rating themselves a 5 out of 5 because they were working really, really hard, but they were working on things that weren't the most essential to their job. And so that's where I went back and I looked at every role in the company and said, hey, here's what average looks like for your job. Here's what good looks like. Here's what excellent looks like. And when I painted that picture and made it very, very clear, people now knew, okay, these are the types of activities and things that I should be doing that are going to lead to greater success in my role. And then we applied that same framework for our marketing strategy. We applied it for our sales strategy. We applied it so many areas of our business. So we decided, like, we need to do a podcast about that one. So we ended the Stuff Your Accountant Isn't Telling You, and we launched the Golden Age of Business podcast. And then I also have another podcast that I do specifically for law firms and finance, where we talk finance side of running a law firm. And so right now we have two podcasts that we're running. And then I also am the host for a podcast within the American Bar Association for how to run a more effective law practice. At the moment, I don't have plans to launch another one right now because 3 is enough.
You're so busy. I have no idea how you find time to do all of this and running your business as well and do all of this podcast and create all the fun videos on you on LinkedIn. I was like, and oh, I forgot. And you are also the public speaker as well, right?
Yes, absolutely. It is a lot. It is a lot to take in. I would say for the past month, I think I've had at least 2 speaking engagements a week for the past month, and I mean, I really enjoy it. So I find a lot of joy in being able to help other people with the lessons, the insight, the information that I've learned either the hard way or I've learned it from other people or books that I've read. And so I enjoy being able to share those lessons with others. And I tend to learn a lot as I'm talking through these concepts or as I'm helping explain it to other people. I tend to get a lot of value from it. Plus, I think, I do a lot of speaking for law firm related conferences. So, it's great for business development. So it allows me to find ways to combine what's necessary to grow my business, what's necessary for me to grow as a person and as a leader, and what's necessary for running my business and for living my life as well.
Wow, I'm just curious. You spent so much time working, doing podcasts, being a public speaker. Where did you find your time to enjoy your life? I'm very curious about that section.
Yeah, so surprisingly, I think this goes back to that military mindset of just, being able to get a ton of stuff done in a short period of time. Is I think really approaching everything that I do when it comes down to content and podcasting. Like there's a framework that I'm consistently following to create content. And a lot of times, like all those funny videos that you see, I have a team of 3 people on my marketing team. We have a content editor. Her job is mainly editing content and distribution. And then we have a content writer. Her job is writing newsletters, blogs, and co-authoring articles with me. And then we have a communications director. Her job is kind of managing, communication we have with like within like the email marketing, following up with clients or following up with partners that we're doing content strategy for. And we all kind of meet once or twice a week and talk through what's going on. And a lot of times for the content, I can film a lot of it ahead of time. Like a lot of those funny videos that you see, like I may take an hour and film about 10 of them in 1 hour. And it's part of the reason why we designed them to be like less than 90 seconds, because we can make them short, but we can make them very relevant and get to the point. So what we did is instead of doing a ton of long form content, we said, how do we make, shorter content, because that allows me to get it done and it not consume my life. So we found ways of, finding little hacks and tweaks like that to still get the stuff done. And then as far as, enjoying life, I enjoy like getting out, going for a hike, walking, and, you know, a lot of times like I'm able to think through a lot of these things that I'm doing while I'm out walking or going for a hike, or my wife and I are traveling somewhere. Like a lot of times, like my wife likes to travel. So, while we're sitting on a plane, I can do a lot of thinking on the plane. So when we hit the ground, I'm like, okay, all right, you have my undivided attention. Like, what do you want to do? because I've already thought through what I needed to do on the plane. And I think part of it is just really getting used to empowering my team to be more independent, to make decisions without me. And sometimes, like, they make a decision and it's not the best decision, and just assuring them, like, hey, I mean, it does it get the job done, or hey, if there was a mistake, all right, how do we fix it, how do we move on? But really relinquishing control over some of those things has allowed me to still have time to, watch movies with my wife, or we want to go out to eat, or if we want to travel to go see family, or like right now my father-in-law's in town visiting, so like spending time with him in between meetings and stuff like that. And I think it's really having a really good team that we've worked on giving them the guardrails, and for the last year I've been working on building their confidence so that they can be confident in the work that they're doing, that I don't have to be as involved as I used to.
That's really good strategy. That's how you can balance your work life. And I think my favorite uh thing about how you balance everything is that you have all your thinking in the airplane. And then so when anyone else just like relaxing and then sleeping or watching videos, you like doing all the work, thinking what to do, everything, lie down, outline everything. So your brain like constantly working. That's impressive how it runs.
Yeah, I would say it is very helpful. I think also sometimes, like, I may, like, I took a trip to like Greensboro because I had to speak at an event there, and instead of driving, because I could have driven there, is I decided to take the train because I could sit on the train and I can think better. And it added about 20 minutes to the trip, but for me it's just one of those things, like, hey, if I'm not sitting behind the wheel driving, but I'm sitting on the train, I can actually think and process what I'm doing. So when I get there, like, I've gotten 2 hours worth of stuff done that I wouldn't have gotten done if I were driving.
Wow. Yeah, you are very productive on everything. That's impressive. That's crazy. I We talked so much about your work, about your fun life. I Before we close up this podcast and this interview, I would love to see if you have any last tips and advice for young professionals who just start this career.
Yeah, so for young professionals who just start this career, one of the best pieces of advice that I got early on was to not chase money, but to chase experience. And I think that one was part of the reason why I was so eager to try different things and get different exposure. Um, because early on there were some, my peers who were really chasing after the job that was going to pay them more. And to be honest, within the first, 8 years of your career, like, the salary increases that you get weren't going to be like the greatest in the world. I mean, it would be good to make more, but what the advice I got was, hey, try to get a variety of experiences, so one, you learn what you like and what you don't like, and you can also be prepared to handle different situations, because after you get past year number 8, the expectations that people will have on you professionally will kind of be that, hey, you kind of already know how to handle these types of situations. And what you don't want is to be a more senior professional and you're learning for the first time. And so I always advise, young professionals is, you know the earlier you are in your career, people don't expect you to already know it. So that's the best time for you to learn, because you don't want to become more of a senior professional and now you're still trying to learn on the job because you didn't have the types of experiences when you were early on. And I'm like, now in early in your career is the least risky time, because you can try different things, and if you make a mistake, people will be there to help correct you or point you in the right direction. So I always tell people is learn to chase experience and not so much money early on, because eventually the money will come.
Eventually, money will come. That's right. I love that statement. That's a good statement to close this podcast. Eventually, money will come. Thank you so much for the interview today. We learned a lot of tips and advice from your amazing stories.
Thank you for having me.